Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong, December 26, 1893, September 9, 1976, was a Chinese revolutionary and the founding father of the People's Republic of China, leading the nation from 1949 until his death in 1976. His reign is marked by significant achievements, including the promotion of communism and the unification of China under a single-party system. However, under Mao's rule, it is estimated that between 35 to 47 million people died as a result of his policies, making him one of history's most violent dictators. Mao's most infamous initiatives include the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. The Great Leap Forward, initiated by Mao in 1958, aimed to rapidly industrialize China by boosting agricultural production and small-scale industrial projects, especially steel production. However, the plan was disastrous. Citizens were forced to produce poor-quality steel in backyard furnaces, leading to a decline in farming. Mismanagement and excessive grain procurement caused a massive famine, resulting in an estimated 20 to 45 million deaths, making it one of the deadliest famines in human history. In 1966, he launched the Cultural Revolution, a decade-long campaign aimed at purging remnants of capitalist and traditional elements from Chinese society. Mao mobilized the Red Guards, radicalized youth who targeted intellectuals, officials, and others deemed counter-revolutionaries. This movement led to widespread persecution, destruction of cultural heritage, and the deaths of an estimated 1.5 to 2 million people, with millions more suffering imprisonment, torture, and humiliation. Today, Mao Zedong remains a deeply divisive figure. In China, he is still venerated by some as a national hero who modernized the country and resisted foreign imperialism. However, his legacy is increasingly scrutinized due to the immense suffering his policies caused. His impact on China and the world continues to spark debate, highlighting the complexity of his historical role. Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin, born on December 18, 1878 in Georgia, was a pivotal figure in 20th century history, leading the Soviet Union from 1924 until his death on March 5, 1953. Renowned for his ruthless political strategy, Stalin transformed the USSR from a primarily agrarian society into a global industrial and military superpower. Despite the devastation of World War II, the Soviet Union under Stalin's leadership played a crucial role in defeating Hitler. His policies, especially the five-year plans, rapidly boosted Soviet industrial output, elevating the USSR to a global power, second only to the United States by the late 1930s. However, Stalin's achievements came at an immense human cost. His forced collectivization of agriculture led to widespread famine, most notably the Holodomor in Ukraine, where millions perished. The Great Purge, 1936 to 1938, saw over 1 million people imprisoned and hundreds of thousands executed under fabricated charges, instilling a pervasive atmosphere of fear across Soviet society. Stalin's regime also orchestrated massive deportations, ethnic cleansings, and the creation of an intricate bureaucratic machinery that centralized power and suppressed dissent. Today, Stalin remains a polarizing figure. Some view him as a necessary force for Soviet modernization and wartime leadership, while others condemn him as one of history's most brutal dictators. The debate over his legacy continues, reflecting the complexity and enduring influence of his rule. Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler, born on April 20, 1889 in Austria, was the dictator of Nazi Germany from 1933 until his death in 1945. As Chancellor and later Führer, Hitler's most notable achievement was transforming Germany into a dominant military power, largely by rebuilding its economy and military strength. By 1938, he had made Germany the most powerful and feared nation in Europe, without yet engaging in war. However, Hitler's legacy is overwhelmingly defined by his crimes against humanity. One of his most infamous actions was the implementation of the Nuremberg Laws on September 15, 1935. Which institutionalized racial discrimination against Jews. This set the stage for the systematic persecution that culminated in the Holocaust, during which over 6 million Jews were murdered, along with millions of others deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime. Hitler's aggressive expansionism led to World War II with the invasion of Poland on September 1, 1939. His military campaigns resulted in the occupation of much of Europe, causing the deaths of 70 to 85 million people, making it the deadliest conflict in human history. Despite early military successes, his brutal tactics and decisions ultimately led to his and Germany's downfall. Today, Hitler is widely regarded as one of history's most evil figures, with his name synonymous with tyranny and genocide. While some extremists may admire his early achievements or ideologies, his legacy is overwhelmingly one of infamy, symbolizing the destructive power of hatred and totalitarianism. Pol Pot, born Saloth Sar, led Cambodia as the head of the Khmer Rouge from 1975 to 1979. His rule, known as Democratic Kampuchea, sought to create a classless agrarian society, but instead resulted in one of the most brutal genocides of the 20th century. Pol Pot's regime imposed radical Marxist ideals, abolishing private property, religion, and traditional culture. The Khmer Rouge's policies led to the forced relocation of urban populations to labor camps, where millions perished from starvation, disease, and execution. The death toll is estimated between 1.7 to 3 million, or roughly a quarter of Cambodia's population at the time. The Khmer Rouge's fall came in January 1979 when Vietnam invaded and overthrew the regime. Despite this, the Khmer Rouge retained a seat in the UN General Assembly until 1990 and maintained limited Western support during the Cold War. Pol Pot died in 1998 before facing trial. Today, Cambodia continues to grapple with the legacy of Pol Pot's rule. The genocide's impact is still felt through political manipulation and societal trauma. The current government, led by Prime Minister Hun Sen, who has been in power since 1985, often uses the fall of the Khmer Rouge to justify its own authority. Kim Il-sung, April 15, 1912, July 8, 1994, was the founding leader of North Korea, ruling from the establishment of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, in 1948 until his death in 1994. His reign was marked by the implementation of Juche, policy of strict self-reliance that isolated North Korea from much of the international community. Kim's leadership was characterized by the establishment of a pervasive cult of personality and tight control over all aspects of North Korean life. Kim Il-sung's significant achievements include the successful consolidation of power through the Korean War, 1950 to 1953, where he attempted to reunify the Korean peninsula by force, although the conflict ended in a stalemate. Under his rule, North Korea underwent rapid industrialization and became a formidable military state. However, Kim Il-sung's regime was also marked by severe human rights abuses. His administration conducted large-scale purges to eliminate political opposition, resulting in the imprisonment and execution of many perceived enemies. Estimates suggest that hundreds of thousands were imprisoned in labor camps, where many died from starvation and forced labor. Additionally, his regime's economic policies and poor agricultural practices contributed to a devastating famine in the 1990s, leading to the deaths of up to 3 million people. Today, Kim Il-sung is a highly controversial figure. While North Korean propaganda reveres him as the eternal president, his legacy is tainted by his oppressive rule and the widespread suffering caused during and after his regime. His policies, along with the subsequent dynastic succession of his son Kim Jong-il and grandson Kim Jong-un, have continued to shape North Korea's isolationist and repressive policies. Saddam Hussein, April 28, 1937, December 30, 2006, was the president of Iraq from 1979 until his removal in 2003. Rising to power through a Ba'athist coup in 1968, Hussein initially focused on economic growth, leveraging Iraq's oil wealth to fund infrastructure, healthcare, and education projects. His rule saw substantial development, transforming Iraq into a more modern state in many respects. However, Hussein's leadership was also characterized by intense brutality and repression. His aggressive foreign policy led to the Iran-Iraq War 1980 to 1988, which resulted in a devastating stalemate and massive casualties, estimated at around 1 million. The use of chemical weapons against both Iranian forces and Kurdish civilians, particularly in the 1988 Halabja attack, resulted in thousands of deaths and further cemented his reputation for brutality. In 1990, Hussein's invasion of Kuwait prompted the Gulf War, 1991, leading to international condemnation and severe sanctions that crippled Iraq's economy. Domestically, Hussein's regime was notorious for its human rights abuses, including the use of torture, arbitrary arrests, and widespread violence against dissenting groups, particularly the Shia and Kurds. His regime faced increasing instability and internal dissent through the 1990s and early 2000s. The 2003 U.S.-led invasion of Iraq, based on claims of weapons of mass destruction and links to terrorism, led to the rapid collapse of his government. Hussein was captured later that year and tried for crimes against humanity. He was executed on December 30, 2006. Today, Saddam Hussein remains a deeply polarizing figure. Within Iraq and among some Middle Eastern circles, he is remembered for his modernization efforts as a symbol of resistance against Western influence. However, his legacy is overshadowed by his oppressive rule, extensive human rights violations, and the devastation wrought by his policies and wars. Hideki Tojo 1884–1948, was a key Japanese military leader and prime minister during World War II, effectively leading Japan from 1941 to 1944. Born in Tokyo and shaped by a militaristic culture, Tojo rose through the Imperial Japanese Army, becoming a fervent ultranationalist and advocate of Japan's expansionist policy. As prime minister, Tojo orchestrated the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, drawing the U.S. into the war, and initially achieved victories in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. His leadership, marked by aggressive campaigns and unwavering loyalty to Emperor Hirohito, emphasized the Bushido Code that glorified death over surrender. However, his tenure saw critical defeats, notably at the Battle of Midway, which shifted the war's momentum against Japan. Tojo's regime was responsible for numerous war crimes, including the massacre and starvation of civilians and prisoners of war. He was also involved in the sexual enslavement of thousands of mostly Korean women and girls for Japanese soldiers, an issue that still strains modern Japanese-Korean relations. Furthermore, Tojo was complicit in atrocities such as the rape of Nanjing, the Bataan Death March, and horrific human experimentation. These crimes, committed in occupied territories and contributing to the deaths of millions, have firmly linked his legacy with the extreme brutality of the Japanese Empire during World War II. After Japan's surrender in 1945, Tojo was arrested, tried, and convicted by the International Military Tribunal for the Far East. He was executed by hanging in 1948. Today, Tojo is remembered as a symbol of Japan's militaristic past, criticized for his role in leading Japan into a devastating conflict. While some ultranationalists view him as a patriot, the broader consensus condemns his actions and their catastrophic impact. Chiang Kai-shek 1887–1975, was a pivotal figure in 20th-century Chinese and Taiwanese history, leading the Kuomintang KMT and ruling Taiwan from 1949 until his death. His achievements include his crucial role in resisting Japanese invasion during the Second Sino-Japanese War, 1937–1945, and his efforts to stabilize Taiwan post-1949. Chiang's leadership was instrumental in maintaining Taiwan's separate identity from Communist China and in securing significant U.S. military and economic support during the Cold War. However, Chiang's rule was also marked by severe repression and human rights abuses. His government implemented martial law in Taiwan, leading to widespread imprisonment, executions, and the notorious 228 incident in 1947, where anti-communist purges resulted in thousands of deaths and deep-seated ethnic tensions. The period of his rule was characterized by brutal suppression of dissent, often through cooperation with criminal gangs and extensive state violence, which left lasting scars on Taiwanese society. Today, Chiang's legacy is highly controversial. In Taiwan, he is both criticized for his authoritarian regime and acknowledged for his role in defending the island and shaping its modern identity. The island's democratic transformation and economic success are seen as partly due to his resistance against communist takeover. Yet, the impact of his repressive policies continues to affect Taiwan's collective memory as the nation grapples with reconciling its past with its democratic present. George W. Bush, born in 1946, served as the 43rd President of the United States from 2001 to 2009. His presidency was marked by significant achievements, including the establishment of the Department of Homeland Security and the implementation of substantial tax cuts. However, his tenure was also defined by major controversies and criticism. Bush's administration was deeply involved in two major conflicts, the War on Terror and the Iraq War. The 2001 invasion of Afghanistan, launched in response to the September 11 attacks, aimed to dismantle al-Qaeda and remove the Taliban from power. Although initially supported, the invasion resulted in a prolonged and costly conflict with significant casualties. The Iraq War, initiated in 2003 under the pretext of eliminating weapons of mass destruction, led to widespread devastation, substantial civilian casualties, with estimates of tens of thousands of Iraqi deaths, and severe long-term impacts on regional stability. The war's justification, based on flawed intelligence, and the subsequent handling of the occupation were heavily criticized, leading to a significant loss of public public trust. Additionally, Bush's presidency is noted for the controversial Patriot Act, which expanded surveillance and reduced civil liberties. Today, George W. Bush's legacy is mixed. While some view him as a decisive leader during a period of crisis, others criticize his policies and their consequences. The Iraq War in particular continues to shape his reputation, with many viewing his presidency as a cautionary example of the risks associated with aggressive foreign policy and executive overreach. Leopold II, April 9, 1835, December 17, 1909, reigned as King of the Belgians from 1865 to 1909. Under his rule, Belgium emerged as a colonial power through the establishment of the Congo Free State in 1885, which he personally owned. Leopold's reign marked significant achievements in Belgium's modernization, including the fortification of Liège and Namur and contributions to Belgian infrastructure and cultural projects. However, Leopold's legacy is marred by his brutal exploitation of the Congo's resources and people. His regime's forced labor system for rubber and ivory extraction led to catastrophic human suffering. Millions of Congolese were subjected to extreme violence, including mass killings and severed hands used as proof of punishment. It is estimated that the population of the Congo plummeted from around 20 million to 10 million during his rule, due to starvation, disease, and brutal repression. Today, Leopold II is chiefly remembered for the atrocities committed in the Congo, which overshadow his contributions to Belgium. His brutal exploitation of the region remains one of the most egregious examples of colonial abuse, with lasting impacts on Congo's history and development. His legacy is marked by moral outrage and ongoing debates about colonialism.